introduce you to my wife, Jenny. I'm supposed to speak into here.
Thank you. And the same question is always the first in every room, and that is, could you describe for us your Damascus moment that brought you to be a candidate for Bishop of Massachusetts?
Microphone? Okay. I hate microphones, sister. Okay. When a nun tells you to talk into the microphone, you talk into the microphone. Okay. 15 years ago, I left the Church of the Redeemer in Chestnut Hill, where I learned to be a priest in a large, healthy congregation. And I moved just a few miles to become vicar of St. Stephen's, a tiny mission church in Boston with a lot of problems and an uncertain future. Today, St. Stephen's is thriving. Our congregation celebrates the Eucharist on Sunday with joy that honors our diversity. Our building fills up every afternoon with children, teens, college students, and volunteers for an afternoon of learning and fun. Our BSA program welcomes 600 young people every summer for an academic enrichment program supported by 1,000 volunteers from our network of 55 partner churches. We run the library at the public school across the street. We're building community gardens, advocating for meaningful gun law reform, and creating jobs for teenagers. This ministry is supported by a talented staff of 40 and a budget of more than $1 million a year. And all of this has grown out of a conviction that our leadership team held from the beginning, that a small church could become vital and healthy by turning outward and welcoming the world in. It's been a long road to where we are now, with successes and failures, a lot of prayer, and a steady commitment to Christ's call to love. Again and again, my life has been broken open by this ministry. Most recently, when a young man who was like a son to me was murdered. I was devastated and challenged, and I learned that I had to trust that God is working even in the middle of our brokenness, even in the face of death, to transform the world. I'm excited about the possibility of serving this diocese where I grew up as chief priest and pastor, as administrative leader and bridge builder. But what excites me most about being bishop is hearing how God is working to transform your life and joining with you in the joy and the challenge of following Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Describe a time when you led a group that stood up for the rights of a minority group to which you are not a member.
Yeah. So I was one of the early signers of the Religious Coalition for the Freedom to Marry, and I worked on that campaign along with my parents, who were very involved. That's been an important issue in our community. I recently had the incredible honor of presiding at the marriage of my cousin and his husband, and I think this is a place where the Episcopal Church has had a really important witness, and I'm proud that my congregation supported that from the beginning. And when we talked about whether we should sign this declaration and be very public about this, people were in favor, even though there had been some disagreement in the congregation. So I think bringing our congregation together around that and then being public about our support for it was the time when I did that.
Thank you. How would you approach the tension between providing spiritual leadership and managing resources and organizational conflicts?
So I'm the full-time vicar of St. Stephen's, which is a medium-sized now congregation with a lot of pastoral needs and a really rich life together as a congregation. And I'm also the full-time director of St. Stephen's Youth Programs, which has a budget of just about $1 million a year, which is money that we have to raise and oversee how it's spent. So I spend most of my life balancing those two distinct but related parts of my job. And I've learned a lot on the job. I didn't know how to do human resources management. I didn't know how to raise $1 million a year. I didn't know how to do evaluation and measurement. We have a really strong program now of evaluation and measurement so that we know what's working and what's not working with our programs. So I've learned on the job, and I think always stayed grounded in our Sunday worshiping congregation, because the Eucharist is the center of everything that we do at St. Stephen's. And so I think having the balance but staying grounded with our amazing family on Sundays is how I've done that.
Thanks. In the past year, churches have received much positive publicity because of the attitude of their leaders. How, in your ordained ministry, have you demonstrated humility, collegiality, and acceptance? How will you demonstrate those virtues in your episcopacy?
Humility, collegiality, and acceptance in 3 minutes. I think that I have demonstrated humility by being very open about how broken I was by George Fuentes' murder. I still can't talk about it, but I think not trying to hide that I was really basically kind of hit rock bottom when that happened, and didn't even know if I could continue to do the work that I was doing and continue the ministry that I had, because it was, I just felt broken and I didn't know how I was going to get healed. And I decided to be honest about that. And when people asked me how I was doing, I was going to tell them that I was not doing well. And I think it left room for other people to share their brokenness. I was very inspired by George's mom, who was also very open about how that was for her. And I think that was, we had hundreds of kids that knew George through our programs, and volunteers in all of our partner churches that knew George and his family and our congregation. And I think we just all had to be honest with each other that we were really shaken and didn't know what this meant for us as a faith community, and to go through that process of healing together and accepting each other for where we were.
Thanks. What are the most important aspects of your personal background that will enable you to be a good bishop?
So I was formed by my grandparents. They were very involved in my life, and my grandfather, who's about to be 103, is still very involved in my life. He lives right down the street from me. So one side of my grandparents were immigrants from Sicily, and the other side, my grandfather that's still living, his father died in the influenza epidemic of 1918, and he was raised as a ward of the state, and his wife, my grandmother, was raised poor as well. So both my parents were raised kind of lower working class, really families that struggled for survival. Sicilian people were treated with a lot of racism during World War II, and it was really hard for my grandfather to find a job. And they, both sides, always taught us about the value of hard work and education, and they raised us to be conscientious, to be morally correct, because they felt that that's how you could succeed, was by doing the right thing. And my grandfather will still say to me, I always did the right thing. I never drank. So their influence on my brothers and me was really very important, and I'm so fortunate that I still have him in my life. He lives at Sherrill House, the Episcopal nursing home near my house in Jamaica Plain. So, yeah.
How do you deal with conflict between diocese and congregation, congregation and congregation, congregation and clergy, clergy and congregation?
Wow, these are hard questions in this room. I think that we deal with conflict with transparency and openness. When I first came to St. Stephen's, there had been a lot of conflict with the diocese and within the congregation, and so it was very clear to me that everything needed to be open and transparent right from the very beginning. I was also aware that, churches tend to see conflict as the end. Whenever we have conflict, it seems to be the end of things. And I think conflict can be the beginning. It can be generative. It can get things out on the table. Here at Trinity, there's been some conflict around the new rectory, while I can see different sides of the issue, the thing that I think is exciting is that people at Trinity are having a conversation about their values and about some things that I think have probably been there that haven't been talked about before. And that's exciting. Maybe something really good can come out of that conversation. And people are at the table, they're having meetings, they're saying things that are hard, but they're together and they're working through something. And so I think being willing to have hard conversations and just to be open and honest is how we can deal with conflict.
Thanks. Bishop Shaw has been a leader in working for justice and peace for Palestinians. Will you do the same if elected?
Yes, I will do the same. I've been to Palestine, I've been to Ramallah, I've seen what conditions are like for people there. I've also traveled in Israel, and I've paid a lot of attention to this issue, and I see the way that Israel is often sort of set up as a middle agent. We give them a lot of money every year because they're our sort of main ally in that part of the world, and they end up playing a little bit of a middle agent role. And so I think it's a nuanced issue, and I think we should advocate for the rights of Palestinians, but I think we should do it from a really thoughtful place, and I think we should do it in concert with other people. I don't think it makes sense for, I think it's a much more powerful witness when we do it together with other Christians, with Muslims, with people from different traditions, and with an understanding of the complexity of the issue there. When I was growing up, there were sort of three intractable issues in the world. One was Israel-Palestine, one was East and West Berlin, and one was Northern Ireland. And two of those are in a different place, and this one is still there. And it is an incredibly complicated issue. I mean, you go to that part of the world and you leave just thinking, how could this ever change? And so I would like to be involved in that issue. Bishop Gale provided some leadership in that area as well. But it's just an example of a place where we need to be at the table with people from other faiths, and that's something I would really be interested in as bishop. The executive director of Mass Council of Churches, Laura Everett, is in the room, and she's been a leader on this issue, and I know she would like to see the Episcopal Church come to the table even more on issues like this. So.
Thank you. Why do you feel God is calling you to remain in this discernment election process? That is, what unique personal qualities of personal character do you bring to the process?
I think that what I bring to this is a vision for what the church can be in the future that's based very much in what we've been able to do at St. Stephen's. I think that the Episcopal Church really needs to turn outward and become a church that's really rooted in mission and really open to some new ways of being the church, really open to welcoming people who aren't currently Episcopalians, have never thought of themselves as members of an Episcopal church. And so I think it's that vision of what we can be that I've learned on the ground and learned how to do it, and I've learned how to manage a large staff and a big budget. But I think it's the clarity of purpose and vision around how we can do this and what we can be when we lead with mission, when we lead with engagement in the community, when people can see what we're doing in the world. Then people want to be a part of who we are. People join St. Stephen's not because we're the closest Episcopal church. They join St. Stephen's because we're the church in the neighborhood. We're the church that's alive and doing things, and people want to be a part of that, whether we speak the right language or we're from the right denomination. I just think people don't care that much anymore. So I think it's that vision that I would bring to it.
That leads into the next question. The role of the church in the 21st century continues to change significantly. What demonstrated qualities and experience do you have in creative leadership that can lead this diocese in the next decade?
Yeah, so I think a lot of churches are facing the challenge of being caught in that cycle of just mainly trying to get people to come on Sunday morning. And we are going to have to move beyond that and think of some again, just some new ways of being the church, some creative ways of being the church that are much more open and outward focused. And I think that's what we've done at St. Stephen's. I've really, from the beginning, when I started, we were just a real handful of people with no programs. And I never really have put that much attention on growing the congregation. We really put all our attention on our mission and outreach in the world. And grew these programs from 20 kids the first summer of Be Safe to 600 kids, and a huge after-school program and all these other things. And along the way, the congregation has grown from a handful of people to, a packed church every Sunday, and, a huge, my first year, our pledge income was $9,000, and this past year it was $75,000. And, that's without any fancy stewardship program, without even really doing much more than saying in December, like, please help us keep this going next year, and handing out pledge cards. And people give because they can see that their money is going to something that's really worthwhile. They want to be there on Sunday because our congregation is a family and so warm and welcoming. And so, yeah, that's what I think we need to do in this next chapter in the life of the church.
Thanks. How do you see your sense of ministry as a bishop in the light of schisms within the Anglican Communion? Could you imagine any potential controversy arising through identity politics if you were elected?
Would I be the first Sicilian bishop? I don't know. Maybe people have a problem with that. My fellow Sicilian over here. I don't think so. But I think this is an important question. I think that we have been courageous, and our witness around issues of justice and equality for all people has been really important, and it has led to some damage in our relationships with the Global South and some other parts of the church. And, again, we often see conflict as the end. But I think if we can stay at the table and try to reach out to each other in love, that change can happen. I don't know how many of you would have said you were in favor of equal marriage, 20 or 25 years ago, but probably most of us in this room are at this point, and change can happen, and we do move towards justice, and that change comes through relationship and through love and respect for people that disagree with us. And so I don't think I would want to be a bishop that spent a lot of time focused on things outside of the diocese. I'm really interested in focusing on what happens here in the diocese, but I am interested in the Anglican Communion, and I look forward to being part of those conversations.
Thank you.
You're at 147?
I am. So I have two ones with short answers.
Okay.
What is something that we don't know about you from all we've read on the website and heard today that you think we would enjoy knowing about you?
Okay. I am the head coach of the Jamaica Plain Regan Youth League Senior Division defending champions. It's true. Story. This will be my 8th year as the head coach of my son's baseball team. And last year, we finally took out the bad guys and won the championship. And so next Saturday, we'll be having tryouts if the snow melts and getting ready for another great season. So I'm excited for that.
And finally, if you were an animal other than human, what would it be and why?
So believe it or not, I've already had this question once before. And I said, and I think I'd stick with it, that I would like to be something that could fly. And I suggested that being bald, maybe I would be a bald eagle, because that would be something that I'd like to soar above it all and have that kind of perspective.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you all.